So it's a Sunday morning. Good morning to you. Happy Sunday. So now, unfortunately, I have to get a plane. I'm looking out at this beautiful view. So unfortunately, I have to get on a plane this evening, late afternoon, and fly back home. So now I'm leaving the Karoo, which is kind of going to break my heart now. Like, I've spent time in the Karoo before, and every time it's a bit of a sense of separation anxiety. But it is what it is. So some site visits tomorrow, and back to work, and a new laptop, and a whole bunch of stuff we have to sort out. But I've had a lovely time here in Craanfranet and New Bethesda, checking out rocks and going to that amazing museum. I can never remember the name. Karoo Fossil Exploration Center. Anyway, I'll put the proper name up in case I've got it wrong here. So that's been a lovely thing, and I hope to make contact and establish some kind of relationship with the professor there and the staff, and have some kind of collaboration. Okay, so on the way home now, we're crossing Karoo sediments. I'm going to eventually transition down to, here we're on mudstones and sandstones. I saw some Dwyka tillite from the Permo-Carboniferous Glaciation, so we're going to traverse that, and then we're going to be down onto the sandstones, mostly of the Cape Fault Belt, and maybe some of the Cretaceous sediments of the Kirkwood Formation. Unfortunately, I don't have a geological map with me, but irrespective of that, maybe we can talk about that later. There's always later videos, lots and lots of later videos. As I start to talk, I always think of all these amazing other things we can talk about. So, I'm hoping for a safe drive home. I see magnificent landscapes. It's flat as a pancake here, and I see these kopjes sticking out of the veld in the distance. You really, if you can, wherever you are in the world, if you can find time to come here, you won't be disappointed. The semi-desert, the arid region of the Karoo. The fact I'm just looking, I can't show you, maybe I should. Certainly the wide open road, and there to the right of the road you can see those kopjes, as they're called here, protruding above the landscape. It's magnificent. I feel like a bit like it's Monument Valley in the US. I'm glad the weather's better. When I came through here last time, a couple of the rivers were in flood and it was tapping down with rain. So the temperature, I think, is going to be 21 degrees today, which is way better than the freezing temperatures we had at Bethesda, and when we came through here it was tipping with rain, and that wasn't that great. Driving in the rain and the mist with flooded rivers and occasional potholes full of water isn't easy driving. So further to that other little video I was making a few minutes ago, I am very pleased with myself. In fact, I'm properly chuffed because my instincts were right. As we're climbing now off the Karoo sediments that I'm pointing to behind me, and Dwyka, Eke, Beaufort, Stormberg. So that's essentially the broad subdivisions of the Karoo Supergroup. And the Dwyka group, Eke group, Beaufort group, and the Stormberg group. And then we have the outpouring of the basaltic lavas sitting right on the top, which I talk about, the Drakensberg. And those are the outpourings of those basaltic lavas that I spoke about in another video. I'll put the link in the description below for that video. And any other video that I might have spoken about Karoo lavas, basaltic lavas. Okay, so as I said, I'm delighted because I said, I think we're going to cross onto tillite. And you know what? Here we are, we're on tillite. I'm going to walk across the road here. You have to follow me. In fact, let me rotate the camera so you can see what I'm looking at. All right, so here's this road cutting. Dwyka tillite was laid down 290 million years ago during an ice age, when South Africa was close to the South Pole. And here's the tillite. And I don't know if you can see this. And you see, I know there's a shadow, actually maybe it's a good marker. I hope you can see this, but these are little pebbles that are torn up by the ice as it grinds its way across the landscape. Who knows, 2,000 meters of ice, 3,000 meters of ice, much like Antarctica now, with these massive ice sheets. Hopefully you can see this. I'll take another picture. And you can see these little pebbles, these clasts that have been, here's a slightly bigger one. And there's another one. And the ice grinds across the landscape and grinds the rock into a bluey. I don't know if you've ever seen any glaciers in real life, modern day ones, that water that runs from the glaciers is blue. And that rock flour in the mill, the ice mill. And so that rock flour, always got the wrong shoes for this job. I came to bury my aunt, and then I came on a geological trip, and I'm having the time of my life. So this cutting behind me is just magnificent because it's a fine example of Dwyka tillite. As the ice has ground across the substrate and ground the underlying rock, in this case probably the rocks of the Cape Supergroup, and I see some granite in there. So as I mentioned earlier, a minute ago, massive ice sheets, much like we have in Antarctica today. It turned everything into a rock flour, which got deposited when the ice melted, ultimately to keep it simple. And we've got this amazing tillite. So my instincts were right. So as I said, I'm very, very delighted. So this is sitting on top of the sandstones, the first manifestation of Karoo sediments. And they've been slightly tectonized too. Getting these things called Bushman headstones. I'm looking for a nice big boulder clast. An undifferentiated mass of blue, fine rock flour that's just dumped when the glaciers retreat. Walking up this pass now, at least it's quiet. How marvelous. Here's the location. This really does need to be like a what's the word I'm looking for? A geosite. You guys can come and stop and look at this. Let me just, R75-3. It's 7 kilometers north. That's the route marker. Oh, I see the moon. It's been orbiting this Earth since the early days of its formation. All right, not much to be seen there. I've got chunks of this. We've also got this back in KZN. Well, I'm still in the Karoo, but I'm going to be out of it very soon, sadly. But that said, I'm going to be on rocks of the Cape Supergroup. There's no trip worth going on if you don't come home with a rock. In fact, the name Dwyka comes from the Dwyka Pass down here in the Cape. The mapping started out of the Cape Colony back in the day. There's another little clast for you. It's quite good here in the shade. They've blasted it. You can see all those little speckles on the rock. There's one of those plumose structures in a half round from the blasting. And you can see quite clearly all these little clasts. I wonder if you can get in closer there. Look at that. All right, so I'm delighted. It's always so hard to make little videos next to road cuttings because there's always so much noise going on every time you open your mouth. A car comes, you can hear the roar of the traffic. There's another 2 cars coming up the pass now. And another one. What's going on? Are they all going to church? I'm going to turn the camera on and show you something else. If you look across at that cutting, you can see there's a joint set running, probably dipping towards inland, towards your right, at about 75, 80 degrees. So that'll be an axial planar cleavage. I remember doing my honors mapping way back, and you get this. I'm going to talk to you about this in another thing, but when there's folding going on, you get a cleavage developing parallel to the fold axis as a result of the stresses that are imposed upon the rock. And those almost vertical joint sets, that joint system is the axial planar cleavage that is manifested throughout any tectonic environment. And some rocks are more susceptible to others. Muddy rock shales and mudstones and those kinds of things can develop a slaty cleavage. And when you have slate on the floor of your house, that's not the layers, the sedimentary layers, that's the cleavage due to the effects of folding. And so that's how we know that the Dwyka has been partially included in some of the tectonism that took place as the Cape Fold Belt was folded, hence the name, into those massive folds that you see if you go through some of those passes further down into the Cape. The most magnificent folding. Right, I keep on saying this, but I'm completely and utterly delighted with myself. Without a geological map, I took a guess at what was coming, and here we are, the Dwyka tillite, so happy days. All right, we'll see you on the next one. Remember, hands always in the dirt.